Director of the Anton Art Center and also the co-chair of the Mount Clemens Artspace Steering Committee. I'm excited to be here with you to share in some of the results from the recently completed market survey. And, oh, I just got a text message for who it is that's got my name. It is somebody I know. I'll allow it.
Okay.
So in any case, what I'd like to do here very briefly, we've got about 21 total people here, 20 people aside from myself. Let's very quickly go around. I'll give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then I'll turn it over to the Artspace folks so that we can hear the highlights of this recent survey. What I will say in the meantime, too, is that you should see a poll on your screen asking if you've participated in the focus groups or completed the survey. Please go ahead and fill that out, and we will be addressing the results of that here soon. So I'm just going to go on down the list that I see on my screen. Peggy, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, I am Peggy DiMercurio with the Anton Art Center. Oops, I'm just going to do that. And I'm happy to see everyone today.
Great. Thanks, Peggy. Jeannie, would you like to go next?
Jeannie Shabath Lewis, Sterling Heights Art Commission, and General Dynamics Land Systems. There we go.
And Anton Art Center trustee.
Yes.
Exactly. Sorry.
Linda.
Yes, I'm Linda Davis Kirksey. I am the grant writer with the City of Mount Clemens and a proud steering committee member.
Great. Terry North.
Hi, I'm Terry North. I am the chairman this year of Phil's Board of Trustees.
Great. Wendy, you're all in my list, so we'll just introduce you as we go down the line. How's that?
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Is that all right?
Hi, I'm Wendy Holmes with Artspace, and I'm part of the team that has been there a couple of times and met many of you. So looking forward to talking some more. And I'm with two of my colleagues. Should I go ahead?
Yeah, actually, Anisha's next on the list anyway.
Oh, okay. I'm with two of my colleagues, Anisha Marwa and Terry Deaver. Anisha, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Anisha. I got to participate as well in the visit last year, so it was so great to meet many of you in person. And I also got to tour some of our steering committee through the Dearborn project last March, which was great for them to actually see kind of tangibly what one of the Artspace buildings look like.
All right, and Terry.
Hi, and I'm Terry Deaver, and while I didn't have the pleasure of being in Mount Clemens, I have had the pleasure of working with the team on the market study.
Great. Thank you all. Don, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Don Johnson. I'm the, I'll still call it new, city manager in Mount Clemens.
Great.
Wonderful. Nice to meet you, Don.
Yes, thanks for joining us today. Karen Smith, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Smith, the Executive Director with Leadership Macomb.
Great, thanks for coming. Laura Kropp, would you care to introduce yourself? I know you just popped in here, so surprise.
That's okay, that's okay. Hi, I'm Laura Kropp, and I am the Mayor of Mount Clemens.
Great, glad you could make it.
Hi, Mayor.
Thanks.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, everyone.
Mickey, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I don't know why I don't have a picture up there, but that's okay. I'm Mickey Weiss. I'm with Mount Clemens Downtown Development Authority, and I am also a proud member of this group. And we've had a lot of fun, a lot of discussions, and I'm excited for this next journey.
Great. Pam, welcome. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, sure. Pam Lavers. I'm the Director of Public and Community Affairs for Detroit Institute of Arts. Past member, committee member in my previous role and before I transitioned to the DIA. So glad to be here.
Great. William Wood, would you like to introduce yourself?
Is he on mute, Phil?
No, he's unmuted. William, are you there? No mic. Okay. William is the Director of Cultural Affairs. I believe this is title from the Macomb Community College and Macomb Center for Performing Arts. Thanks for coming today, William. Dave Pierce, you're next up. I see you're muted. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dave Pierce. I'm the President of the Board of Trustees for the Starkweather Arts Center out in Romeo. Thanks for inviting me to this, and glad to be here.
Of course. Thank you. Dominic Romano, you're next up. Would you care to unmute yourself and say hello?
Hello, everybody. Dominic Romano. I'm with the Community Assistance Team at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Was happy to participate in the focus group last year and looking forward to hearing about the study. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Dory, I see you're next up here. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dory Vasquez-Nolan, Executive Director of Care House here in Mount Clemens. Just excited by what's in store.
Great. Thanks for joining us today. Eleanor Gamalski, I see you're next. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, Eleanor here from Congressman Andy Levin's office. I do our outreach in Mount Clemens and a portion of Macomb County. I was really excited to participate in a focus group and come to the survey launch party. And it's just such a treat to have this really exciting thing to look forward to in the district amidst really hard times. So thanks for having us involved, and we'll continue to support however we can.
Great. Thanks for joining us today. Ian Rapnicki, I see you're next. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Ian Rapnicki. I work in community engagement at the Detroit Institute of Arts. I'm an outsider to this group, but I'm really looking forward to learning more and seeing some potential to work together with everybody in the future.
Great. Glad you could make it today. Kate Bell, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, no camera here today at the work computer, unfortunately, but my name is Kate Bell. I'm the Community Development Fellow with Mount Clemens through CDAM. Happy to be here.
Great. Glad you could join us today. Catherine Diamond, you're next up. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Sure, no video for me either today, unfortunately, but hello everyone. I'm Catherine Diamond. I am on the board of trustees for the Anton Art Center, and I've participated in one of the focus groups, and I'm excited to hear what next steps might be, and also to see some very familiar faces. So hello everyone.
Great, thanks for joining us, Catherine. Maria Zardis, you're up next. Would you introduce yourself, please? Maria, are you there?
Sorry, Phil, I couldn't find that mute button or unmute button quick enough. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Maria Zardis. I work for the Macomb County Department of Planning and Economic Development. We're extremely excited about this event and or this project, and hope to see it continue to move forward. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Maria. Mary Mead, you're next up on the list. Would you like to introduce yourself? Mary, care to introduce yourself? I'm happy to make an introduction if Mary doesn't care to. Mary is a staff person at the Anton Art Center. She is the office manager who's been working with us for quite a long time now. Thanks for joining us today, Mary. Robert Mass, I think you are our final introduction today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Mass. I work for Representative Bill Sowerby. Just started in his office. I took over for Ryan Bardoni, which some of you may have known. So excited to learn more about this.
Great. Thanks for joining us today. Did I miss anyone? Not hearing anybody saying that they were missed. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on over to Wendy. But before then, just another quick reminder to please complete the poll that should appear on your screen here. If you don't see it, you should be able to press the polling button that does appear somewhere on your screen. We'll be addressing the results of that poll in due course of presentation here.
Perfect.
So if you care to go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you everyone for doing this. I know we only have a short time together and we have a lot of information to share. So we're gonna get right to it. Most of you have participated, I can just tell by what you said, in a focus group or in some meeting. So this is not the first time that you've heard about this initiative. So thank you for taking the time to come back and hear more. We really appreciate it. So Terry is controlling the slides, so I'm just gonna, yeah. So for those of you who don't know Artspace, and I doubt if it's anyone really at this point, but there were a couple people who said they were new to their roles. So just so you know, we are a nonprofit, we're based in Minneapolis, we work nationally, and we create long-term affordable space for creative people, for artists, for arts organizations, for creative businesses, any creative person who needs a space. We try to figure it out. And we now own and operate 54 projects in 38 cities and 24 states. And we have a big, beautiful one in Dearborn that some of you have been to. It's the Artspace City Hall lofts. It's their old City Hall buildings that have been converted into 55 units of affordable live work housing and then community space also on the ground floor. And you can see a picture of that on the right. Yep. And then the next is a map of our work across the country. We're doing some consulting work now in Puerto Rico, so you see that. We have a new project in Honolulu, so we do get out, out and about, although we haven't been on a plane since March, as many of you probably haven't. So what have we been doing? We've been working with these fine folks in Mount Clemens since really the latter part of 2018, even though you don't see that on this slide. There was a lot of prep work that went into the first visit that we had in April of 2019. So that was really the first time that we touched Mount Clemens soil and met all of you face to face, or many of you face to face. And then about 8 months later, we came back to launch the market study in January of this year, which concluded in March. And that is the information that we're going to be sharing with you today. Both Terry and Anisha will be talking about that data and what it means, and then we'll answer your questions and talk about next steps. So Anisha, I think I'm turning it over to you.
Yeah, so kind of this word cloud that you can see on your screen, if you're able to see the presentation, was what we heard about the art scene in Mount Clemens. So we heard everything from it's very welcoming, but it's also disconnected, isolated, unrecognized, but it's also growing and diverse. So it was kind of a mixed bag there. But we did realize that having a space like this would really help support the arts, is why we really wanted to pursue this market study. And so downtown revitalization kept coming up as a common goal and theme. The creative community felt disconnected. The Anton Art Center is an amazing anchor institution we have downtown already. There's such a dedicated community members and leadership that are ready to make a project happen. The steering committee in Mount Clemens has been our favorite, our case study for what a great steering committee you guys have all been. And then there's also some really great opportunity sites and capital funding sources. And from our work in Michigan, the Dearborn Project, we're also aware of many of those, which makes Mount Clemens even more appealing. And so we asked the group, we had about 4 focus groups, or we had 3 focus groups in a public meeting at the library in Mount Clemens. And we asked them to prioritize what type of space people need. And so flexible gallery space, live work housing, artist studio space, shared creative space for fabrication, gathering networking space, co-working for clean types of arts, and retail and performing art space all came to the top of those lists from those meetings there. We also, so then when we pursued the study, using those types of spaces is kind of what we asked about in that arts market survey, people's interest in that, where it would be, kind of how they could program it, interest in using it, what they could afford to pay for it, interest in types of amenities were all asked in the survey. And the survey, that you guys did such a great job with your outreach. This is just a short kind of condensed list of all the places that the steering committee helped make sure that the survey was marketed. It was live for 7 weeks. and from the end of February to early March or mid-March. And we're really lucky that we were able to do an in-person launch event before COVID hit, where Artspace staff came out to the Anton Arts Center and did a public kind of event explaining what it was, and had people take the survey right there as well. And this is just a list of where, you know, everything from digital to print media to Facebook and Instagram. Did you guys really, you know, make sure it was heard about?
So I'll take over a little bit on here. So that outreach that Anisha is talking about was incredibly phenomenal, because you were able to reach 555 total respondents to the survey. And I just want to give you a little bit of context around that, because we have our project in Dearborn that Wendy was talking about, and we did a similar market study there, and we had 329 responses to that survey. And it was a much larger city. So this just indicates to us how pervasive the outreach was, and able to get people to the table to take the survey. So this slide is really just giving us a snapshot of overall who were the respondents, regardless of their particular interest in space. And you can see there's great age diversity. We certainly were hearing from senior artists, but always love to see that artists are coming from all walks of life. We have our veteran artists that were taking the survey. Artists, you can see the top cultural creative industry involvement. And while this is centered a lot on visual arts and makers, just below that, if you get below that 18% of respondents, we start to get into the performing arts. So there was artists from all different disciplines that responded. Not as much racial and ethnic diversity as we'd love to see, but we also know that this, while this is a really important tool for us to gauge demand for space, it is just a first step, and it's not always it's not the best model of getting information from people from all across the community. And it just indicates to us, as we always want to do and always want to stress, is that ongoing engagement into artists and communities of color is really important in order to make sure that everybody is included. But it's a first initial snapshot for us. So in terms of geographic reach, you can see the entire broader metro region, really great diversity across the spectrum geographically. We didn't hear from as many artists maybe in the city of Detroit specifically, which also indicates to us that there's probably yet remains an untapped market in that geographically as well. But we did hear from artists within Mount Clemens, those that have lived there and have left, but maybe we'll find out want to come back. And then those that have just never lived in Mount Clemens. So this is an opportunity to kind of share everything that you all have going on with a broader artistic and creative audience regionally. So let's look at, of those who took the survey, 81% showed some interest in space. So that's a really strong number. And just as a reminder, we asked about a variety of different spaces. We asked about live work housing. We asked about studio space or creative workspace that's rented on an annual basis, and it's private space. And then we asked about creative spaces, and we asked about spaces that were related more to the maker, visual arts community, and those that were related more to the performing arts community. And you'll see here that the shared creative space is certainly a really super strong interest. Again, not terribly unusual. We completed most of our surveys, I would say, across the nation. We see this as a bit higher than live work or even private studio spaces. And sometimes it follows the indication of more of the senior artists that we're seeing, or artists that are a little bit older, a little bit more settled into their homes and such, and so their housing isn't quite as strong, but still 136 artists that were interested specifically in live work housing, still looking really great at that 25%. And let's see here. So we wanted to find out about a little bit more about those that are specifically interested in the live work housing. And here you can see that some of those artists have, again, never lived in Mount Clemens. And some of those that have lived in Mount Clemens in the past and don't currently might even be interested in coming back. We always want to ask about that. We also found that the artists who are interested in housing are a little bit younger and a little bit more diverse. We don't see that in this slide, but I think it's about maybe 5% more diversity, which is a trend we often see as well when we start getting into the interest in housing specifically. And again, this is really strong, and we do see still opportunity as any type of new space initiative moves forward to continue ongoing outreach and communication with artists across the region and artists of color. And we expect that this number would still continue to grow as the word continues to get out. We asked about incomes, if you may recall, because one of the primary funding sources to help ensure long-term affordability of spaces, the low-income housing tax credit, and along with that comes then income restrictions. And we are pleased to find that nearly 50% of those interested in housing as part of this survey group would qualify for affordable housing based on the information they provided us in terms of their household sizes and their household incomes. And if spaces could be made available to those, or maybe even outside of that, to that workforce, 80% of area income, there'd be even greater demand for space. But we also have to watch what people can afford to pay a month. And that 90% of artists who are interested in housing could pay $400 to $1,000 a month. And if you look over at the columns there around the maximum rents per HUD that you can charge for 60% or below area median income housing, you can see that fits pretty squarely. So it's always important for us to see that these things start to line up. So that was a really positive result to get back. And one of the things we always ask too is how much income artists are currently earning from their art or their creative or cultural work. And 78% earn 25% or less of their income from their art or creative work. And again, not unusual across the country that artists are not making often a ton of money out of their creative and cultural work. So there are also members of the general workforce within the community in need of housing and in need of senior housing. But also what we found, because we've done some studies of our own projects across the country really recently, and in the past some of our older projects, we found that artists by and large are finding that their income from their art and creative work does increase over time as they are part of a sustainably affordable artist community. I think about a third of our artists that we surveyed across our portfolio just this past year has felt very strongly that their income from their art had increased as a result of living in a project of art spaces. Sort of look here at the private studio space. Those who are interested in private studio, we do break out the numbers between the 161, that strong number of artists who are interested specifically in private rentable studios for themselves, as compared to those that might be interested only in studio and not in housing. And that's just something we like to separate out, so we start to get a sense of, if you build housing and you build studio space, how much overlap may there be, so that you're not overbuilding. It helps us remain kind of conservative in our initial numbers. But this would certainly be serving artists who really have a need for the studio space. You've got 53%, 85 of those artists don't have dedicated studio workspace currently. So they're either working from home, as you can see, of those 91 artists, or they just simply don't have the space that they need to create their work or get their cultural work that they're involved in. And a little bit more about the studio space, whether it's something that's being built in a mixed use project or if it's being introduced into the community in some other way. Certainly space doesn't have to be huge to satisfy many of these artists. That 200 to 500 square feet as a minimum would be serviceable, but it does have to be really affordable. So $250 a month or less would be affordable to 66% of those artists. About a little less than a third can pay $1 a square foot or more for space, but that leaves a lot that really need to be at that $1 a square foot or less for whatever space they're renting. And what we were finding, it's not necessarily in this slide, but you can see that as artists need more space, like maybe they need 500 square feet or 1,000 square feet, it doesn't necessarily remain equitable to how much they can pay, right? So it becomes less per square foot on a monthly basis or an annual basis, even as the spaces get larger. So it just reinforces that it's needed space, but it does need to be super affordable. Space features leaning a little bit towards that visual arts, the natural light, ventilation, high ceilings, an opportunity to sell and share work through storefront access. And to the extent that new studio space is incorporated into a single building that can have other amenities, the gallery exhibition space was highly important. Obviously, Wi-Fi is super important for folks that are sharing their work in the world today. Additional storage, classroom and teaching space, again, opportunities, spaces to be able to share work and to teach and to engage with the public generally. Anisha, do you want to talk a little bit about the creative space findings?
Sure. So when we talk kind of about shared creative space, it kind of encompasses those kind of maker spaces, all that type of kind of use that you would just share on a short-term basis. And so we found that the people who said that they were interested in this was people who did painting and drawing and crafts and fine crafts and mixed media and photography. And 76% live outside of Mount Clemens. So this would be a great way to kind of capture some of those people that would be interested in maybe coming in and using space in Mount Clemens too. It would be really critical that a local operator address this need. We know at Anton Art Center, you already have some kind of ceramic studios and things like that. I think there is definitely a market for more of that, but this type of space really relies on local groups to program it. So that they would rent space from Artspace in a future building, and then they would have this type of operation of some kind of a maker space. There's 284 respondents who needed this, who were interested in this type of space, and it was by far the most needed type of space. And then, so gallery exhibition space came up again, studio space for general purpose. So this could be everything from, rehearsal space, meeting spaces. It could be used just on a short-term basis, ceramics and clay and photography again. And we also asked about shared performing arts space, which is a little bit more specific because there's a lot of different kind of that technical piece. Like if you want it for dance, you'd want a sprung floor. If you want it for rehearsal, you'd want different acoustic space. So rehearsal space came up a lot in that. Music recording studio was also of interest. A black box flexible performing space was of interest, and a soundproof practice rooms, more of a formal theater, and networking meeting space. So some of these types of uses can also be accommodated in what's happening locally in the community. I know that there's a small theater space, maybe looking if there's, a soundproof practice rooms that can go there, or if there's already developments happening, where can maybe some of this local need be captured. So that's kind of what the goal of this is that Artspace can't obviously build all of these different uses, but seeing maybe where locally other developers or other existing spaces can accommodate this would be really helpful for the creative community. And there was 113 people who mentioned that they would be interested in this type of space. So we also asked in the survey one of the open-ended questions about who are some partners or just kind of ideas from the community on what they would want to see in future space. And I'm not going to read this whole list, but if you can see it, there's such a great variety. I mean, we met the people from the Emerald Theater downtown. I know we had a chance to visit some of those pop-up shops that were happening. I know with COVID, it's hard to kind of reimagine what, the downtown area looks like right now, or kind of how that vitality can be there. But I think there's just some great ideas of everything from a coffee shop. We have a number of our buildings have small retail coffee shops too, which kind of helps with that, bringing people in and that welcoming space. We saw, outside picnic area, teaching space, yoga space. There's some festivals, and there's other arts groups in the metro area that would also be good partners. I'm glad to see that there's a couple people from DIA here too that was listed on this list, as well as I know Arts and Scraps, who we work with actually through our Artspace immersion program too.
So it's a lot of data, a lot of findings. If you have had a chance, or if you've received the full study itself and taken a look at it, there's a ton more information in there for those of you who like to geek out on that. But the way that we use this information is we want to be able to translate that into how many housing spaces do we think is a reasonable place to start. And we're always looking through a fairly conservative lens, because you don't want to overbuild, but we definitely still want to be able to meet the need. So when we're looking at the housing, for example, we arrive at 21 to 34 artist live workspaces based on from a market standpoint, based on what we heard from the community. And this assumes that it's affordable housing affordable to the community up to 60% of AMI households. And I just want to mention that some of the factors that we take into consideration when we're arriving at this includes how much households are making. So do they income qualify for affordable housing? What's their current status in terms of home ownership and where they're living? We also asked a question in the survey about whether there was more than one member of a household that was taking the survey and interested in space. And these are just different ways that we give kind of different discounts to, so that we can arrive at something we feel really confident in. We do always encourage, as I mentioned earlier, having ongoing outreach, because we think this is a starting place. We know you can't reach everybody with a survey of this nature. It's it is just a place to let us feel confident that there is a need for space. And then as we continue to reach out maybe into the city of Detroit more regionally and to artists of color, we expect that we would continue to build upon that. In terms of private studio spaces, we're looking at up to maybe 18 new spaces. And that assumes that it's affordable again, that it's meeting the needs based on the types of shared facilities and or features that are looked for by artists. And also the need to coordinate any new studio spaces, whether it's incorporated into a multi-use facility or it's coming online in some other way within the community. There was a lot of overlap, if you'll recall, from what Anisha was talking about in shared general use studio spaces. So those folks that want just once in a while, I want to be able to have a studio space, or I want to be able to share spaces in more of an open forum with other artists. A lot of artists who wanted that kind of space also wanted long-term studio space. And some of those, again, wanted housing. So it's just something to coordinate and think about as one is putting together a project concept or introducing new space into the community, is that overlap, which is one of the reasons sometimes we suggest with studio spaces is maybe phasing in spaces or having a diversity of types of spaces so that there's something for everybody who needs workspace outside of their homes. The shared creative spaces, again, emphasizing those shared and short-term studio rentals, which was really high in addition to some of the other spaces that Nisha was talking about, and more information in the full report, again, about all the different kinds of shared creative spaces that are of interest for anybody who wants to put together a business plan or expand on programs that they currently have to offer new types of spaces to the community. Prioritizing gallery spaces and general purpose studios and perhaps rehearsal space. We were seeing some in that performing arts, particularly around music spaces that were needed. And just a note around performing arts spaces, I love that Anisha was talking about, what do you have in the community now that can be expanded on to serve artists, because it wasn't quite as strong of a response for performing arts spaces, but it's typically a smaller sector in the overall creative sector, but still important space to those artists that are practicing in those mediums. So how can we use all of this information? Again, it goes to inform any potential mixed-use project at Artspace. That's where we start to project concept. We take this and start to say, okay, how many spaces? What's the mix of spaces? And that begins to inform what kind of funding tools and who can we bring to the table? Does the tax credit work? Are there philanthropic agencies that would be particularly interested in supporting any of these kinds of uses? And it helps us to start to think about or drill down even further than we already have on site opportunities that match up with what this need is and how robust the market is. But it doesn't stop with just Artspace. We always want to make sure that this information is being shared broadly, because we know that there are private building owners and there are artists and there are developers and there's others that are thinking, hey, creative space, love to be able to offer something that I didn't know before was a need, or I didn't know what artists could pay. So we want this information to be shared in that way. And then those that want to continue to advocate for funding, for space, for support of the creative sector, all of this data can be used by artists and you all here as part of this meeting, the stakeholders for this type of initiative. So we're hoping that you're using this to continue to advocate for new space and for a future project. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Wendy about our final recommendations based on all of this work. Wendy? Did we lose Wendy somehow?
No, I'm here. I'm here. I feel like there needs to be a drum roll now. And after I talk a little bit, then we should reveal the first poll and then launch the second poll, Phil. So what do we recommend? Well, we're very excited that all of this information that we're collecting leads us to feel confident about some kind of mixed use project that would have live work housing and other kinds of space for your creative sector. It's very strong, and I have to give you huge kudos for the outreach, because you did do better than Dearborn. And I think that speaks to the network that you all created to be able to do the outreach that you did. So anyway, you should feel very proud about that. Investing in the creative sector we think is an important strategy for the city. You have such a strong creative sector. Taking advantage of it in a positive way, we think could make the city even more vibrant. It's clear that you've got an important number of, a substantial number of people in this creative sector. You knew that instinctively, but perhaps the information is a bit surprising to you. So we'd like to hear from you about that. So our plans for the next step are to continue to talk about where could a physical space project be in Mount Clemens. We've looked at a number of sites as part of our feasibility study, and our next step would be to find the funding to advance pre-development so that we can start looking at those sites in more earnest and figure out which one is going to work, what makes the most sense for the city and the county, etc. So we are wanting to turn it back, I think, over to everybody to get us feedback and just ask any questions that you'd like as well. I bet you're wondering about timing as well. So timing, as far as we're concerned, we'd love to get a tax credit application in 2020 to the state, to MSHDA in 2021. That would be pretty aggressive, but it's possible because you have 2 rounds a year. And I appreciate the fact that several staff of state legislators and Congress people are on this call too, as well as MEDC and economic development and the county and the city. It's just a great cross sector of all the organizations that we would need to coordinate with in the future to make sure that this initiative is successful. So I'll stop there and would love to hear your questions. Feel free to put them in the chat as well.
I saw the results of that first poll, so I was excited to see that many of you not only participated in the focus groups, which we expected, but also took the survey. So we love that there's artists amongst you as well.
Oh, that's great. I couldn't see the poll. What did the poll say, Terry?
Oh, you know, I clicked off of it already, the results, but the results I think got shared with everybody. Popped up for me.
I've got the results right here. 31% or 5 people responded A, they participated in a focus group. 1 or 6% responded B, they completed the survey. And then 10 or 63% responded both.
Great. So either raise your hand or type in the chat. We'd love to hear from you.
Stephen Sath has raised his hand.
Okay. Hi, Stephen.
Hello.
Hi, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. All right, well, thanks for sharing this information. Obviously, those of us that live and work and breathe and eat and sleep Mount Clemens are not at all surprised about our popular little community here. But a question for Linda Davis-Kirksey. What do you need from us to start assembling the financing for step 3? Or is that more appropriate question for the folks at Artspace now?
I think both. It's both.
We can do it together.
Yes, it's for both of us, as a matter of fact.
So what resources do you need from us to get starting putting coin in the bank?
So Linda's working on identifying pre-development sources and has been pursuing some of those paths right now. Yes. It's about $750,000 over 2 to 3 years to get the project to the point of construction, while we're putting together all of the financing applications and funding for what will be probably a $12 to $15 million project when all is said and done. And that's a guesstimate.
Yeah. All right.
Linda, do you have anything else to add?
I have 4 funding sources that I'm working through right now that I have inquiries out to and have submitted our executive summary. Hello, Steve. I have submitted our executive summary to, and so I'm waiting to set up, and I want to have meetings with them, with our steering committee, to review these and what our needs are going to be. So I'm waiting on hearing on responses from those. So I'm working.
What kind
of? I'm sorry.
What kind of time frame do you anticipate?
I'm trying to do this next phase as what we discussed in our last meeting, as far as our benchmark, to have these things in place by December. I think that's what we discussed.
That's our goal.
That is
Great,
our goal.
outstanding. Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
Yeah. We're not going to let any grass grow.
No, not at all. Not at all. Did did we answer the question, hopefully, Steve?
Yep.
You know, I think it might be worth noting as well that Wendy had mentioned that it's going to be about $750,000 of investment to get to the point of construction. But we are just seeking the initial, it's about $150,000 that we're going to need to start the pre-development.
Right.
So we're starting with that much more bite-sized, I guess.
Modest amount. Yes.
Yes. To move to that next phase.
$750,000 right off the bat. So looking at one thing at a time, you know, that initial $150,000 will get us to the point where we're more closely reviewing sites and making a site selection and beginning some of the initial design work, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, absolutely. Which is when it gets really exciting.
Yeah. I'm looking at the poll here too, and we've got 14 responses, and everybody is saying resounding yes. I'm not sure if you want me to leave that poll open for another minute longer here, but I think that it's pretty clear that everybody's interested in helping to move something forward with us here.
I'd love to hear from the congressman staff and the state legislator staff, just your perspective and how this meshes with state goals, state and federal goals. Sorry if I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, no problem. We can all only imagine what's coming up. I mean, certainly right now we don't know what's happening next week or next month. Unfortunately, arts funding is not something that is top of mind for folks, even though it should be, and has a lot to do with our economic rebound and, you know, creative potential to build back better. But in terms of the low-income housing tax credit, I know that, you know, that being the centerpiece of funding you've gotten on the federal level in the past, I think that housing is definitely something that there is, you know, some bipartisan agreement on continuing to support and is known that we will need to now and especially as we see more fallout. So, you know, you guys are oftentimes more creative than we are in thinking about the angles and what we can push. But you know, again, we're all in to do whatever we can.
Thank you,
Eleanor. I'll just echo what Eleanor said. The state is in a particularly hard bind, I guess, facing a couple $billion deficit over the next couple of years. So I don't necessarily know if that's going to be an avenue that would be top of mind for many of the others, you know, especially given that we need 149 decision makers to agree to it. But absolutely, we're here to help in whatever way we can and, you know, do what we can to push this forward.
Thank you. Yeah, every state is looking at a deficit this year. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts?
Oh, 100%. I like that 100%. Wow.
It's a good percentage.
I'd like to share one more thing, if I may. This is Steve Saff again. So I was cleaning out my mountain of paperwork that I've accumulated in Artspace, and I came across the letter that we first sent to introduce Mount Clemens to Artspace, and we're going to be celebrating our second anniversary here on the 28th, just a few days away from now. So I think we should be pretty happy and pat ourselves on the back that over the course of 2 years we've already completed 1/3 of the process assembled by Artspace. So everybody give themselves a big woohoo on that one.
Oh, that's great, Steve.
Yes.
I'm going to frame that letter and put it in the lobby of the building.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes, Steve, we really get hard copy letters and inquiries, so it was a fun one. I still remember that too, the whole package.
Exactly. We don't get those very often.
Years since that letter was sent. Wow. Well.
Yeah, and much further back that the Art Center worked on the concept independently. So how many years before that?
Oh yeah, several. Several years.
That's right.
We have a great committee. We absolutely have a stellar committee. I am so proud of everyone. We haven't missed a beat. We've stayed focused, and we'll get it done. I am confident of that.
Back to the state and federal financing challenges in relationship to COVID, is there a way to frame the request that makes it more appealing from a standpoint of providing housing for those that might have particular need? And I guess a follow-up question too is how soon should we start, advocating to our legislators to take a look at this for us?
Well, I'm not sure who wants to answer that. Dominic, go ahead.
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of insight there. I mean, you have to kind of look at the history of what we've been dealing with for the past 6 months. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation itself has rolled out 19 new programs. Really kind of a heavy lift, super heavy lift for a state agency to do in such a short time, considering, it's like steering a battleship when you're talking about policy on that level. However, we still feel, and we have community development goals and objectives and policy the Michigan Strategic Fund Board has, and those sorts of things that facilitate community development. And a lot of us feel that this type of work, this type of project, is something that aligns very well with what we typically see from a community development standpoint. Of course, we would need more detail in order to actually have a pitch for our normal tools. Yeah. But we have to fall pretty much in the same category that the legislative reps and our supporters in the House and Senate feel we have to look to see what happens and how things shake out with this. There could be tools that could be helpful, but just to kind of keep the conversation going. I know this thing's not going to get built tomorrow. And we know that developments take time, and I don't want that to discourage the very positive and good energy that's going on right now, because it sounds really great and it's something I wish I could have taken advantage of years ago. But
that's right, you're a musician, aren't you?
Yeah. So, but just to keep the conversation going, you never know. I mean, there could be some ways to find resources. It just might not come from where you think. And so that's kind of where I want to stay in the conversation, helpful. And then we'll just keep an eye on things on that budget.
That's great, Dominic. Thank you.
Dominic, follow-up question?
Sure.
So what about brownfield, and if a particular location that I'm thinking of here, Mount Clemens, might be selected, any historic tax credits or historic financing for restoration? I mean, anything from those venues, does that all circle out of your department, or do we have to deal with different agencies of the state?
So there is the Brownfield Act 381 program. And basically that reimburses the developer over time based on certain activities. And so that if MISTA is involved helping support the low income aspects, it might be the only Michigan Strategic Fund Board approvable tool to use in this regard. Because
So it's one or the other, okay.
And then the other one would be, no. It'd be MISTA. We could probably do a brownfield with the MISTA. Because really what brownfield does is it prepares the site. And for those activities that would get rid of those brownfield conditions. And that includes blighted, functionally obsolete, contaminated, or a facility, and possibly historic structures because of their high cost of rehabilitation. Also, as far as tax credits go, the state historic tax credit was floating around to be something that could come back, but hasn't been getting. I'm not really sure. It's not really my lane, and, but you know, it has been floating around. But the federal historic tax credit is still part of the National Park Service and the Secretary of the Interior, and that's something that can be done or pursued. There are probably some rules around what's eligible and what you can, you can get from that, and you would certainly want to consult with somebody who's an expert in that realm. And that is certainly not necessarily in our realm, but the State Historic Preservation Office, which is now in our office, would be part of helping put an application through for those tax credits. So certainly keep me in the loop. I can help you kind of navigate some of these things if when it comes down to more detail, but also to give you an idea of what the possibilities are. Just, you know, from a high level view and some like early feedback. So
thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Great. I think that we're going to want to wrap this up here. We're coming up close on 2 o'clock. So if there are any final questions, we can take those now. Or not, you know.
I'm curious, some of the shared spaces or the private studio spaces, did you guys have any ideas of maybe local organizations or spaces already in the Detroit metro, not just Mount Clemens, that can accommodate some of those?
Could you repeat that a little more loudly, Anisha, please? That was a little quiet.
Yeah, I said some of the shared spaces around rehearsal space and black box and other studio spaces, not the housing piece, but do you guys have some ideas of within Mount Clemens or the Detroit area where some of that can be accommodated? Just, was there some brainstorms or light bulb moments that came out of that?
I would guess that there's some opportunities to lean on some facilities like the Emerald Theater as some places where more traditional theater might be mounted or where rehearsal space may be possible. There aren't any, as far as I'm aware, there aren't any existing shared spaces within Macomb County that are specifically for artists, not at this point. There had been a black box theater in downtown Mount Clemens a number of years ago, but it's been some time since or Steve, you could probably recall a bit more specifically when that closed up shop. I know that in Detroit, very specifically, there are some places like the Pioneer Building where there are shared spaces. But even there's not really like a shared studio. Shared studio spaces, I guess you could say, where a multitude of artists might use the same space. It's more like the individual types of space rentals. But most of those even are just in the city of Detroit, not even outlying Wayne County or local. So I think that even there was last year sometime an article published somewhat embarrassingly about a nonprofit organization that was dedicated to spaces for nonprofits that took over a building that housed a bunch of artists and kicked them all out. So,
the Russell building?
It wasn't the Russell.
Yeah. Well, that was a result of the California.
Allied Media was the nonprofit.
That was it, Wendy. That was it. I didn't think it was the Russell, though. I mean, the Russell probably should have been condemned for a number of reasons.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right. I think it was another building. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Steve, you had mentioned that building out in California. That was a very similar situation to the Russell Industrial Center. And you know, there is a need for individual and shared spaces across the region, and I think that might be part of the reason why that came up so strongly in the market survey as something that artists are looking for.
Right.
So
I think sorry to interrupt, Phil. I thought that the data is a great launching pad for to share with, you know, some of our businesses like Artist Music who exist in Mount Clemens already, and just in opportunities for some space that they have upstairs at their music store, and maybe building out some shared practice spaces, or you know, having soundproof rooms for individuals. So I thought, you know, even just some of the people that we have now in town actually do have some space that maybe they could work some of these things into, and it would expand their, you know, market share basically.
Yes, that's a
and
really
then
good
also,
idea.
I also thought too, from the results, you know, I was we were actually just about a month shy of this data really being useful for our library millage. But it passed anyway. It passed anyway.
Well, good.
So, yeah. But, you know, our library space is going to be completely converted, and our the basement of the library is going to potentially become a maker space. But what kind of maker space, I think, is still, you know, in development. And so, you know, maybe some of this data that is in this survey can help dictate those decisions.
yeah, as a matter of fact, there are plans for no less than 2 new maker spaces within the city of Mount Clemens, between the library's new plans and the Discovery Center's plans over time here. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity. People are starting to pick up on the need for these types of spaces and the importance that those types of spaces can play in supporting local artists and makers and creators, but also for our local economy. And so I've been really interested to watch these plans sort of take shape with some of these other organizations, and applaud them for going down these roads as well.
Exactly.
We are just about at 2 o'clock here. I think we can take one final question if there is one.
Do you want to remind everybody about the public meeting?
We've got an additional meeting this evening at 6:30 p.m. where we have invited primarily the artist groups, the artists who have participated in the survey, in our launch party and focus group. If you know anybody who would be potentially interested in joining that meeting this evening, it is at 6:30 p.m. and it is not too late for us to get them registered. Feel free to drop me a line at p.chris@theartcenter.org. I think everybody here probably has my email address. I'll put it in the chat box as well. And shoot me an email before 6 p.m. and we can get you registered.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you all for taking the time to talk and to listen and to think about how this data can be used, not just for a potential Artspace project, but beyond that. That's really important. And we'd be happy to have a conversation, for example, with the library to talk about the shared space piece more.
All right.
Great job.
Thank you, Wendy and Anisha and Terry, for your time today. And again, thank you to everybody else for taking some time to learn more with us about the market survey and where things are headed next. And don't worry, I definitely took note that 100% of you are ready to help us.
That's fun.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
All right.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. See you tonight.
Yeah, see you later. Mm-hmm.